This is Lecture 5 of the course, The State of the United States Economy and Society. For some in our society, the 2008 crash had almost no impact on their quality of life. For others, the result was to destroy an already fragile existence. This presentation will offer some insight into the degree to which the lives of people at the bottom of our socioeconomic ladder have improved or not improved. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development reported in December 2018 that on any night during the year, some 553,000 people were homeless in the United States. Fully one-third of this number were living in unsheltered locations, meaning they were living outside somewhere. A report issued in May of 2018 in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology indicated that heart disease is the major killer of those who are homeless. Over half of the homeless do not have access to a consistent source of health care, so their conditions often go untreated. Smoking is the main source of cardiovascular disease, accounting for about 60% of deaths each year. Alcohol and drug abuse are additional causes. In 2018, more than 180,000 people in families with children were experiencing homelessness, and most, 91%, were staying in sheltered locations. This chart indicates the level of homelessness in New York City, which has reached new all-time records on Mayor de Blasio's watch. The Coalition for the Homeless reported in June that there were nearly 61,000 homeless people. This included 14,600 families sleeping each night in the municipal shelters. The lack of affordable housing is the main cause of homelessness. Between 1996 and 2017, New York City lost more than 1.1 million apartments renting for less than $800 per month, and the city is currently facing a deficit of more than 500,000 apartments needed at that level, given the number of low-income New Yorkers. Housing and Urban Development officials estimated in November 2018 that there were about 38,000 veterans across the United States without stable housing on any given night. HUD Secretary Ben Carson credited initiatives started under President Obama, particularly connecting housing vouchers with local charities, to provide a holistic approach to veterans' physical and financial health. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition reports that no state has an adequate supply of affordable rental housing for the lowest income renters. Across the nation, there is a shortage of 7 million affordable rental homes. The continued decline in the number of publicly subsidized housing units is exacerbating the problem of homelessness all across the United States. The 2019 report by the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies states that many renters are cost-burdened, meaning they use more than 30% of their income to pay for housing and therefore have difficulty paying for other necessities. The reported trends are not encouraging. The report states, the Consumer Price Index indicates that overall rents rose at a 3.6% annual rate in early 2019, or twice the pace of overall inflation. Households with incomes under $15,000 continue to have the highest burden rates, with 83% paying more than 30% of income for housing, including 72% paying more than 50%. Here is a list of what it costs to lease a one-bedroom apartment in some of the nation's largest cities. Believe it or not, the number for San Francisco reflects a decline from 2018. The New York City rent is at an all-time high. Philadelphia apartment rents are also increasing, At $1,380, Philadelphia has moved up to become the 23rd priciest city. The economic problem is easily understood. Where employment is strong and household incomes are relatively high, including the income of retirees, land prices are high and tend to keep increasing beyond the ability of individuals to afford asking rents for apartments or to accumulate sufficient savings to make a down payment and cover closing costs to purchase a property. When property markets become severely stressed by rising prices, a correction occurs. Where employment is weak and household incomes low, land and property prices are low. In the most distressed neighborhoods, buildings or vacant lots cannot be sold at any price. When potential tenants cannot afford to pay a rent sufficient to cover the cost of ownership, absentee owners defer maintenance, allow the property to be condemned, and walk away. The result is that all across the United States, there are millions of vacant, abandoned properties. Data published in August 2019 by Atom Data Solutions indicate that nearly 1.5 million single-family homes and condominium units were vacant at the beginning of the third quarter. Over 304,000 were in the process of foreclosure. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau reveals that the cities with the largest number of vacant properties are Flint, 15.7%, Detroit, 11.2%, Gary, Indiana, 19.4%, and interestingly, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, 16.9%. One response to the problem of affordability has been the development of very small houses to serve as transitional housing for the homeless. Small villages of tiny houses have been constructed in Portland, Seattle, Austin, Madison, and elsewhere. Many others are choosing to purchase mobile, tiny houses for reasons of affordability, reduced environmental impact, and as a lifestyle choice. These homes cost around $40,000 to have constructed. Owners need to obtain the land separately. The number of people living in tent cities scattered across the nation continues to increase. Late in December, the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty reported a 1,342% increase in what they described as homeless encampments between 2007 and 2017. They identified at least one such encampment in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. The response of city officials to the plight of these people is often to outlaw the encampments without providing a reasonable alternative. However, this year in Oakland, California, the city dedicated a small amount of land where the homeless can park an RV. Also, late in 2017, the city started providing heated, shed-like cabins with a door that locks and enough space for two people. A related social issue is the extent to which people are unable to afford adequate food for themselves and their families. The Democratic mayors of San Francisco and Philadelphia were the featured speakers at a discussion on housing and homelessness at the 2019 winter meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors held January 24, 2019 in the District of Columbia. They talked about efforts to relieve homelessness in their cities and about their approaches to adjacent issues such as criminal justice reform, drug addiction, and access to health care. A report issued in mid-2018 by the U.S. Department of Agriculture stated that 15 million households in the United States access to food is limited by the lack of financial resources. The Food Research and Action Center added that over 18% of households with children experience food insecurity. Jim Wheel, president of the Food Research and Action Center, stated, While often hidden behind closed doors, food hardship is a serious national problem that requires a serious national response. Too many people in every region, state, and community have been left behind in the economic recovery from the Great Recession and are still struggling to put food on the table. The high rates of food hardship underscore the need for Congress to pass a farm bill that protects and strengthens SNAP. Otherwise, we will see worse health and hunger for struggling children, seniors, working families, and others across the country. A report issued in December of 2018 by the organization Hunger Free America states, nearly 10% of employed U.S. adults, a total of nearly 15 million people, lived in homes that couldn't always afford enough food. More than 17% of children and nearly 8% of older Americans, adults 60 years and older, lived in food insecure households. What causes food insecurity? The survey conducted in 2017 by the U.S. Conference of Mayors identified low wages, high housing costs, and poverty. None of this should be a surprise to anyone. The most recent detailed statistics on food insecurity published by the U.S. Department of Agriculture are for the year 2017. Reports from other sources suggest the situation has not improved significantly despite the continued reduction in official unemployment. Households where one or more working age adults have a disability have a much higher incidence of food insecurity than households generally. Consistent with poverty levels, the households with the most severe food insecurity are single mothers with children. If you live in a non-metropolitan rural area, you are also more likely to experience food insecurity. Over half of the counties with the highest rates of food insecurity are in rural areas. Key factors are low-wage employment opportunities, higher unemployment and underemployment, lower level of education, insufficient affordable child care, and an absence of public transportation. The organization Feeding America reports that African American households face hunger at a rate more than twice that of white, non-Hispanic households. The 10 counties with the highest food insecurity rates in the nation are at least 60% African American. 7 of the 10 counties are located in Mississippi. In a 2018 CBS Money Watch segment, Aaron McDonald, Vice President of Feeding America's Center for Applied Research and Action, observed, nearly 1 in every 6 seniors in the United States faces the threat of hunger and not being properly nourished. More than 5 million senior citizens aged 60 and older. Many are forced to choose between paying for groceries and paying for needed medicines. Feeding America serves more than 46 million people, of which 7 million individuals are age 60 or older, and an additional 6 million are age 50 to 59. ARP reports that seniors face a health care bill of more than $130 billion every year due to medical issues stemming from senior hunger. Data released by the U.S. Department of Agriculture on the 2nd of August 2019 indicated that 38.4 million people are receiving food stamp assistance. As this chart indicates, the number of recipients has been falling annually since the peak in 2013. However, Lauren Bauer at the Brookings Institution writes that it is more meaningful to take the percentage of the population instead of a count of recipients because the U.S. population is growing. By this measurement, since April 2019, the only month that had a lower participation percentage was February 2019. and that month was affected by the government shutdown. The 2018 Agriculture and Nutrition Act was signed into law on the 20th of December 2018. The bill made a number of minor changes in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. The Trump administration had proposed ending automatic eligibility for those already receiving federal and state assistance that resulted in people with significant assets obtaining food stamps. Food insecurity is widespread on U.S. college campuses. Current estimates suggest that as many as half of all undergraduates experience food insecurity while pursuing college degrees. A report issued in May by the Pew Research Center found that the percentage of students coming from lower-income households enrolled in an undergraduate college program reached 20% of the total student population in 2016. Not surprisingly, over 40% of students described as independent were living in poverty. The data on the number of college students who do not have a healthy or regular diet indicates this problem is worsening. In a report written by Christopher Nellam at the American Council on Education, he states, "The numbers are striking. Feeding America estimates that nearly half, 49.3%, of its clients in college must choose between educational expenses, that is, tuition, books and supplies, rent, and food annually, and that 21% did so for a full 12 months. Poverty has always been a serious problem in the United States, particularly among persons of color, residents of non-metropolitan and rural communities, the elderly, and newly arrived immigrants. While as a percentage of the total population, poverty gradually declined beginning in the late 1940s, the absolute number of people living in poverty continues to increase. The Brookings Institution published this chart detailing the situation in 2017. The chart shows that about 1/3 of those living in poverty were children, about 1/8 were senior citizens, and more than half were working age, 18 to 64-year-old adults. Federal guidelines establish the poverty level for a one-person household at $12,490. A major societal disagreement exists over the extent to which government should intervene on behalf of the poor. There is no consensus on the causes of poverty. Is poverty primarily the result of individual behavior and decisions, or is poverty caused by systemic flaws in the socio-political arrangements and institutions of our country? This map, released by the U.S. Census Bureau in September of 2018, indicated the level of poverty in each state. Note that 4 states and Puerto Rico reported a poverty rate of 18% or higher. Persons of color have had higher rates of poverty going back as far as statistics have been gathered and reported. Significant improvement in the living conditions of minority populations occurred after passage of civil rights legislation, but the percentages remain much higher than for whites. Of 27 counties with a majority American Indian or Alaska Native population, about 2/3 had unemployment rates in 2017 above the national level, with 9 at 10% or higher. Nearly 1 in 5 American Indian children live in households with incomes lower than 50% of the federal poverty level. Another indicator of the depth of poverty in American Indian communities is a serious shortage of decent housing. Nearly 80% of people whose heritage is that of a Native American tribal society do not live on a reservation. Most live in urban or suburban communities. This is the result of forced relocation by the United States government during the 1950s. Thus, the causes of poverty within the American Indian population involve factors that are qualitatively different from that of blacks or immigrant groups. requiring separate analysis outside the scope of this update. The population of the United States is growing older each year. The median age as of July 2016 was 37.9 years, up from 35.3 years in 2000. There are now 51.4 million people in the United States aged 65 and older, which represents 15.3% of the nation's total population. However, reaching age 65 is no longer an automatic time for retirement. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the percent of individuals aged 55 and above in the workforce in March of 2019 was 46.1% for men and 34.9% for women. People are working later in life for a number of reasons. They are healthier and have a longer life expectancy than previous generations. They are better educated, which increases their likelihood of staying in the labor force. And changes to Social Security benefits and employee retirement plans, along with the need to save more for retirement, creates incentives to keep working. U.S. retiree health care costs are forecast to increase at an average annual rate of 5.5% over the next decade, a rate of increase significantly higher than the anticipated general rate of inflation. As this graph indicates, people who are white in every age group still comprise over one-half of the senior population. The median household income in 2017 for individuals aged 65 and older was $24,224. For households, $41,125. However, only 1 out of 5 older adults have income from earnings. For the 4/5 of people aged 65 and older who are fully retired, the median income was just $19,352. The main sources of income for people over 65 are Social Security, 36%, income from working, 30%, pensions, 18%, and savings and investments, 13%. Younger retirees derive more income from working and investments, while over half of older retirees rely heavily or exclusively on Social Security. Data compiled in June of 2017 by Business Insider shows the degree to which the net worth of persons is significantly attached to the ownership of a residential property. And of course, those who are age 55 and above are most likely to have repaid their mortgage debt or nearly so. As residential property values recovered from the 2008 market collapse, the unrealized housing net worth held by U.S. seniors has climbed to over $6 trillion, tripling since the year 2000. The poverty rate for people aged 65 and older is lower than for any other age group. Two major reasons are the equity in a residential property and benefits under the Social Security system. A report issued in May 2019 by Atom Data Solutions indicated that more than 5.2 million residential properties were seriously underwater. That is, the total mortgage debt owed was at least 25% higher than the property's estimated market value. This represented an increase of 17,000 properties from the previous year. This represented 9.1% of all properties subject to mortgage debt. There's no data to identify the percentage of these properties owned by senior citizens. Some seniors continue to lose their property as a result of foreclosure after failing to meet the terms of a reverse mortgage loan. Deferring maintenance, falling behind on property taxes, or not carrying homeowners insurance constitute a default of the terms of a reverse mortgage. There continues to be a good deal of imprecision in the reporting of how many seniors lose their homes as a result of a default condition. Industry representatives explained that many HECM foreclosures often occur after the last surviving borrower dies or moves away, and the heirs do not exercise the option to repay the loan and retain the property. Next, we look at the impact of sports on our economy and on our society.